are listening to WHOA Podcast, coming to you from Gainesville, Florida. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the WHOA GNV Podcast, the Coronavirus Sessions. Just remind everybody, every weekday at noon, we're bringing you a little half-hour session with our community leaders, our community businesses, and a whole bunch of other individuals just to find out how they're navigating the coronavirus and do whatever we can to really limit the impact of this on Gainesville, on our businesses, and on, just on our community. So I'm really excited to get into it. And before I do, I want to remind everybody, because James always tells me that I forget to introduce myself. He's editing these. He's like, you always forget to introduce yourself. My name is Collin Austin, and I'm the founder of New Scooters for Less, and the CEO, my man, Michael Dees, my co-host. What is up, dude? How are you?
Dude, I'm well. It's another day going through this. I still have my health, so that's most important. On the scooter side, we still got some sales trickling in, some stores trickling in. So at least it's not completely stagnant, which is good. Just trying to find ways to keep the ball moving,
Yeah, I wanted to let everybody know that this particular episode is going to be sponsored by us, New Scooters for Less. One of the things that has been on the rise, because of this has been bicycle sales. I don't know if you guys have seen this, like bicycle sales have been on the rise. I think there's just a lot more people at home. They want to go riding, bikes in their neighborhood with their kids and that kind of thing. So I really want to remind our audience that we sell electric bicycles. Bentelli is our distributor, and we have those Bentelli e-bikes, and they're really, really cool. And so, if you want to pedal for the first mile to keep up with the kids, but then you get tired, you can just give it a little bit of that e-juice, and you can probably speed past the kids with the juice there. But yeah, just if you're interested in getting one of those, of course, right now we're one of the businesses that is really hurting because of this thing. We could definitely appreciate the sales. So if you're looking for an e-bike, you want to spend time with the family or riding around the neighborhood, then I'm going to have them reach out to you, Mike. So just email Mike at nsfrl.com. Heck, if you need to buy it and us deliver it to you, we can figure out a way to make it all work for sure. But we really appreciate your support during this time. And I don't want to waste any more time. I want to get right into it because we have a very special guest on the show today. My friend, Eric Godet from the Chamber of Commerce, CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. Eric, thanks for being on the show and joining us today, man. I know you are swamped with things.
Well, I am, but like I said to you earlier, it's a pleasure for me and all of the staff at the Chamber to help our businesses during this time. It's a critical period. It's a period where we at the Chamber want to make sure we're sharing our commitment with the whole community and making sure we're there to answer any questions, put forth any issues or challenges to our county commission, our local cities. We want to make sure, I apologize.
No, you're good.
But it's really one of those challenges. I have two different phones in here because it gets crazy. In addition, there you go. Both
like we said, he's swamped.
He's swamped, man. He's trying to carve out a few minutes for us, and it's going.
It's okay. So it's really, we want to just assure our community that our focus is making sure everyone's safe at this time. And it's a critical time because we know, looking at the economic trajectory that we were on prior to this COVID thing, we were having record sales in all sectors. Mm-hmm. January and February were incredible. And for us, it's one of those things where everything came to a screeching halt. And we are really making sure that we're providing those resources to help businesses survive and thrive during this period as much as possible. So there's an irony that's going on in our community. The majority of businesses are dealing with setbacks and shortages and having to do temporary layoffs and adjust to what's going on. But there are a few sectors that are thriving because of this. And so what we focused on is those who are looking for jobs, directing them in those areas. So for example, some of the areas now, since the SBA loan thing has come out, there are areas in the finance sectors that they're bringing on people, temporary workers. There are areas in the cleaning businesses that are cleaning behind COVID patients, behind the students in the dorms, behind the apartments where they've left. And that huge demand, and they're hiring. So what we're trying to do is keep abreast of what's going on and pivot and let people know where those jobs are available today, understanding the challenges that are happening in your traditional industry. And so with that reassurance, we want to make sure we're bringing our community along and facing the reality of what's going on. we have a new normal now. And it's kind of, you've heard people refer to 9/11, how things shifted and security in airports. Well, that's what's going on today. We have a serious shift. We were thinking that a lot of our online learning and changing of jobs and the way things would be working at home would take 5 to 10 years. We were predicting that this was going to happen by 2030, thinking about 80% of what we're doing today is going to be very different. And we've done it within the past 3 weeks. So this is how quickly things are moving. There's an exponential change that's happening. So the requirements that are going to be needed in a community that we looked at luxuries, broadband for everyone, especially with enough bandwidth, that's a requirement. With kids in school, parents having to work, different things, utilizing the system. So it's how do we help connect those dots? We've been integrally involved working with the city to help feed the homeless. I mean, we have some folks that really need some help. They can't shelter in place because they don't have a place. So how do we help meet those needs? And we have tremendous community partners that have stepped up and really done an incredible job. Individual businesses, restaurants feeding them. We have groups like, I think this Wednesday you'll have Pomodoro feeding the whole Gainesville police force. And after that, they plan to feed the sheriff, all of our first responders, then our fire department and EMTs. And you can get countless groups and restaurants that are doing similar things and feeding, the Ronald McDonald House and feeding, different groups, stepping up during their time of need also, but they're giving. And so what we're really trying to do is make sure we focus on how do we support one another by buying gift cards, by ordering out, by whatever we're doing, the GNV, what's for dinner, what's, making sure that we're promoting and helping one another at the same time, because there's going to be a critical component. And we're really starting to work on that right now at the chamber and with the city and different things. So how do we come out of this economic recovery? How do we prepare for when this ends? Because we're going to be a different community operating by a different set of rules for a period of time. And how do we make sure we maximize the opportunity for all of our businesses?
Yeah. Eric, so, one of the things that I've noticed has been this huge increase in communication, right, from the Chamber of Commerce. Newsletters, I've gotten 2 or 3 newsletters a day where most people would get super frustrated with that. These have been super valuable, super informative. It's been almost like I've been craving the next one. It's like, what's next? So I think you guys have done a phenomenal job of really just getting that communication to the business community. I really want to I'm really curious as to the first actions, because at the same time, I understand your, the purpose of the chamber, and, I've been heavily involved with you guys and we've done some incredible stuff. I am a chamber advocate for sure. So if anybody's listening to this and you are not a member of the Chamber of Commerce, I highly encourage you to become a member of the Chamber of Commerce. These guys are doing incredible work, and all members of the chamber team. So, but that's my plug there. But
I appreciate that.
Yeah. But my thing is I'm really curious as to when this thing started to go down. And you guys are hearing it for the, we've all kind of heard about it. We knew it was overseas. There was a little bit of this denial of it ain't, we're okay. It's over there. That's their problem, kind of. We got our own stuff to worry about over here. And that's probably not the case with everybody. It's not fair for me to say that, but I think there was just a little bit of denial. And then all of a sudden you start hearing about cases popping up in the US. We start hearing about a case pop up in Florida. We hear about the first case in Alachua County. And then it becomes more of a reality of okay, this is going to be a problem. And what were the first actions that you took? What were the conversations like with the team at the chamber? I would love to just hear some of that.
Sure. That's a great question, Collin. So what we did was about 3 weeks ago, we brought in our leadership team at the chamber of just internal staff. And we were in our conference room, the Alachua room. And our biggest thing is really thinking about, if this is going down the way we think it is and what we've seen happen overseas, how can we make sure we don't become another Italy? Was our conversation at that time. This was the beginning. Spring break was coming up, people getting ready to take off. And we're like, well, what can we do that's best? And so one of the first things we did was first started brainstorming on how we can provide value to our members during this period. And I have to give Shaw, Attic, our communication specialist, a lot of credit. He said, well, the biggest thing you want to do, there's going to be tons of information. And if we're putting out anything, we want to make sure that we're putting out value. We don't want to put out everything. We want to make sure it's value so that our members know that they can come to our site and get connected where they need to be connected. It's valuable information that's going to impact their business, impact their employees, impact their families. But we can't put everything out there, else we will no longer be relevant. We would just be another voice in that mass of voices going out. And I think that was really critical in the beginning for Shaw sharing that with us. And we really took that to heart because there was a lot of stuff coming at us. But what we wanted to do was make sure. So one of the first things we did was actually close our door to the public and sent that out. Because we wanted to protect our employees. And then we have some employees that are a little bit more mature than some of us. And they've been at the chamber. I tease our receptionist, Ms. Pauline. She's a huge icon to the chamber. She's seen, I think, 6 chamber presidents come and go. I'm like, hey, don't be getting rid of me too quickly. She just laughs, that kind of thing. And
I absolutely adore her. Adore her.
She is amazing. And so there are certain individuals we asked to go home just to protect them because they fell within that age limit. And then we also had others that were a little more energetic and younger in our chamber thing and had been to a lot of social gatherings around that time. We're like, hey, just go and work from home and isolate and make sure everything's fine, And we kept a skeleton crew over there at the chamber. And we did that for a week. And within that next week, we transitioned to really everyone working at home remotely because everyone had laptops, connection, that kind of stuff. We have that ability. And so it made for an easier workplace. And then we would just go in as needed. The whole discussion was making sure we're providing value and help and resources. So probably about 2.5 weeks ago, when the SBA first approved that loan on a Wednesday, we made sure we had contacted our local SBA director, which was Michael Chung, to set up a podcast for the next day. We didn't want to wait 24 hours. We got on the phone with him that day, set up everything, made sure it was there. So by the next day, less than 24 hours, we were having a podcast with Michael after that whole process had approved, because we wanted to make sure every business in Alachua County had a leg up and had an opportunity to even submit their applications to him to get a look at an approval before they went to the state or whatever, get that guidance and that feedback. We wanted to make sure that we were providing relevant details. So we were following all the bills in the House and the Senate to make sure that whatever we can put input on and give through the state chambers and through the U.S. chamber to make sure we're representing our small businesses, that was critical. The next component that we really found to be really important was the essential businesses component. And that was one that comes out of CISA. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but that's the Cyber Security and Infrastructure group on the federal level. They're the ones that put up the essential businesses, had it in place. And they set it up so that states can use these guidelines and put these programs in place, or counties. And they did it that way because they knew that some states would be a little more reluctant than some counties. And so they gave a level of control that the smaller you get, the more local you got, the more control you had. So when Alachua County announced theirs, they shared that these were the minimums. And if the city of Gainesville wanted to increase the requirement, or Alachua or Newberry or whatever, they could. But those were the minimum standards that were in there. We as a team really started working and started fielding hundreds of calls from our members that wanted to find out if they qualified, or if they met the exemption, or how can they write an application to become an exempt company. And so we spent that second week really focusing on that. And I think there were like 300 applications that went in while we were talking with the county commissioners, the county manager, the mayor, the city manager, working through this dialogue on what are we doing that's best for our community. We wanted to keep as many businesses up and running as possible, as safe as possible, but our priority was really protecting our citizens. And so that created the dialogue that we went through until we transitioned into this next week. And the governor jumps in, which is wonderful. and put a statewide ban, because we started noticing a little flattening out of those areas that had to stay at home in place, but we saw exponential growth in those areas where, number one, there weren't any diagnoses before. We were watching that growth happen. And so now you just about have probably almost every county, if there's maybe one or two left, that may be it in the state of Florida. But when we implemented it, there were quite a few that didn't have it. And so it's a combination of what can we do as a chamber, because there was a huge outcry for PPE. Reaching out to find out what our members can do from a manufacturing standpoint, a supply standpoint. We have a lot of biotech businesses that may have PPE sitting there that they can, hospitals and stuff can use to help. What can we do as individuals to coordinate and help? We have incredible manufacturers that are doing the 3D printing and creating the reusable mask and the different things. It's just like, what can we do and be a vehicle to provide and bring everyone together to work with the county and the city and all of our healthcare facilities.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what's incredible about these times, challenges like this. I've said it over and over and over again, and it's funny that you kind of referenced 9/11 before, because that's exactly the reference that I used. The one that I remember was post 9/11, where, and actually, I mean, during 9/11, where people were sacrificing themselves for their neighbors, for people that they didn't know. Really coming together as a community. We're definitely seeing that right now. And I've been really proud of how Gainesville has responded, and really pulled together as a community. So yeah, mad props to our community for really coming together on this. Really, really curious if there's been any conversations with the University of Florida. UF obviously is a vital part to this community. Businesses like mine absolutely depend on college students being here. The University of Florida sent everybody home for what was supposed to be 2 weeks. Completely understand why they extended it and said, it's gonna be the rest of the semester. Now they're talking the rest of the summer. From an economical standpoint in our community, like businesses like mine, where it's 80% scooter sales, and now the chance of us selling anything between now and August are pretty slim. That's going to have significant impact on us. Obviously, there'd be significant impact on other businesses as well. I'm just wondering if you guys have had any conversations with UF. What do those look like? What's on their mind? I know that they're trying to protect the students, and we want to protect the students. We want to protect everybody. But just really curious if there's been any conversations there.
Absolutely. So it's really neat. One of the first calls I received from the university, and the follow-up, and a lot of emails back and forth with them. And I will tell you, we are truly blessed to have the university and those resources here. What's really neat is, they're such an engaged community partner to check on the well-being of the business community. And not only that, the resources they have out there and that they're putting on their website. And we've been encouraging people at the chamber to look at it, some of the most unique stuff that's going on. They're really the focus on coming up with solutions and working on cures. And I mean, to know that we have companies here that are working on solutions for this virus right now that have come out of the university, that's amazing. A lot of the strategic planning and even the research from one of the university professors and or physicians that came up with using the Sterigard, that's even more effective than the N95 mask. That there's a tremendous amount in our community from all the hospitals, all the biotech, all of the VA, the nursing homes, and everything. They've used any kind of sterilization type material. It's amazing that we have this here that we can use for masks and materials. And so I can say the university's been at the forefront of really working on solutions. I can tell you one of the most heartfelt correspondence I got was reading a response from Dr. Fox to one of the students. It was incredible. This is a student, loves Gainesville, loves being a student here, understands why she had to go home, go to this place where her parents moved and she knows nobody or anything. All of her best friends are here at UF, and the struggle, of being away from here. And she represents so many students, but she understands the importance and the call Dr. Fox made and that all of us are dealing with. What's really neat is that in there, he really felt her pain, but there was nothing more important to him than the safety. in making sure whatever we do as a community and as a university, erring on safety and protecting the students. Because if we do that, we can all come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's as tough as it is, everyone's in this boat together. We're a community that has grown with the university's growth and built around that. And we're truly blessed of having it here. And the impact that, that immediate impact that they felt was a ripple going right throughout our community that everyone felt.
Right. Eric, have you guys talked about or even like processed any of the long-term impact from this thing? I know we're very much in a like, what do we need to handle now? Like, what do we need to focus on now? And I totally get that. But it's interesting because, me as a small business owner, I've even started like projecting a few months out and even like longer than that, thinking like, hey, like our scooters, for example, Vespa scooters are manufactured in Italy. Right. And like the supply chain, this is the first time I've ever experienced anything or seen anything on a global scale. Normally it's like community and hey, even take 9/11. That was a national, sure. Like, don't get me wrong. I understand there was worldly impacts from that as well. But sure. in terms of like, that was more of a national thing, and this is completely global. Like, everybody is being affected by this in some form or capacity. And now I'm even thinking about, well, what if my manufacturer and their people can't get back to work, and and they're not manufacturing scooters, and those scooters aren't being shipped to the United States, and those scooters aren't making their way to my showroom. Like, right now we're good because we have that inventory. But I mean, what is on your mind looking at this thing, a year from now? Like, what have you guys even thought that through at all? Or
so, as part of our economic recovery plan and some of our internal discussions as a team, we're looking at, to me, there are certain components that are really critical, tied to recovery. So you bring up a great point. We were such a global community. Okay, so it's touched by every part of the world today in a way that we were never touched before. So it's not just about us recovering, it's all of our supply chains and partners and everyone else recovering also in those relationships. So I'll give you the great example right now. At a time when nobody's really driving around or doing much of it, we're watching fuel price plummet to record numbers, right? You're watching a glut come out of Russia, a glut come out of our Arab countries, and we're already the world's largest supplier of fuel right now. And it's like all of these things are playing a role. And so in terms of how do we come out, I'm going to share this word that you've probably heard quite a bit, but we're going to probably hear a lot more in the next year. Individuals, companies, communities are going to have to pivot. This is a new world we're in. We're watching some manufacturers do that already. So take Bacardi, and I was reading a story with them in their Jacksonville plant, and they're all over the world. What they're doing is they're converting. They're not making any more rum right now. They're making phenomenal, hand sanitizers that they're shipping out all over the world because there's a need for so many of these things. People are pivoting in terms of looking at what is that demand? Where is that change coming? Our community has just taken a huge shift exponentially. And so companies, groups, and everyone, we're going to all have to pivot. So we're here talking today from our homes as opposed to a studio. We pivoted. For us to recover, we're going to all have to shift. We watch the restaurants make that shift with takeout and delivery services. We watch the living bars creating their cocktails and doing, people had to pivot to survive. And this is not going to end shortly. We're going to have to be creative and transition to whatever we have to do to make sure we're providing value to the community, because the ways we used to do it historically may not be pertinent anymore as we move forward in the next few months to a year.
I'm going to jump in now and ask a couple questions, Eric.
Hey, Mike.
One I have is, Gainesville kind of set apart from the rest of the country, say, and the big thing being football season, right? I'll get there eventually. We're a little too far away from August, from September to start worrying about it, or are we? Like, it's such a huge thing. Like other years past, you talk about the economic impact of losing one game, getting rained out or something like that, or lightninged out. But we're not too far away from talking about the possibility of losing multiple games or a season. So at what point does that start weighing on decisions that you're making, initiatives, other businesses, and do you start strategizing about how to handle that, or you just is it wait and see and get a little bit closer to whether that's going to happen or not, or what do you think about it?
Thank you. Great question, Mike. I don't think a wait and see is a good approach. I love to be a lot more proactive. One of the things that I think we've always had an opportunity and never really embraced as much as we should is the support of that huge economic engine that the University of Florida Athletic Department provides to this community. We all as residents benefit from it, from the hotels being packed from Marion County down to Columbia County with folks coming in for games, to restaurants, shopping, everything that happened. We all benefit from that. And one of the things that I think this is going to give us is an opportunity to really embrace that in a much larger and deeper scale, that really brings more passion behind our value of Gator Nation. So years ago, we were talking about Gator Nations everywhere, and we would just say that, and we would go in there. But I really believe when it comes down, when you understand the economics of the impact that the University of Florida at Santa Fe College plays in this community, we really need to embrace it in a way that we never had a revelation before. And I think our businesses going through this will help make that happen. I'll give you another example. Last week, I got an email. I've been chatting with the folks from Gator National. So we had to cut that off right in the middle of that process. We had our event, and when that word came on what's going on, we shut it down. And, they're committed to coming back this year, on the same level they were going to do before, their March. So it's one of those kind of things where they value us, and that's the largest engine, thing that brings in, people coming from all over and stay for weeks. And so for me, it's one of those kind of things. Mike, you're absolutely right. We can't wait. That's why that dialogue happens now. So the university will make a decision on when the games and what will happen, and we'll go along. But what we can do from an economic recovery standpoint is really start building in that community pride and support, and building that trust for Gators from all over to want to come back and be comfortable coming to the games and being here and supporting them. And that's what we can do in the interim, that preparation on how do we as a community come together to support that economic engine that is very critical to so many of our businesses locally.
And on that note, or similar to it, I think that one of the things we talked about 9/11, and it was obvious, at least to me, that the fallout from that was going to be long lasting. It was never going to be a return to normal there. Right. One of the things I think that's interesting about this, you could make that argument that we're never going to go back to the way things were, but I think a lot of people do still treat this as it's a light switch thing. Like one day it's just going to be over and business is going to return to normal. So I think that that's interesting, because you have some people that are going to be eager to go back to their local businesses and treat things as normal, and there will be some consumer fear about getting back into the world. So it just kind of begs the question, you say we have football season, or we run the Gator Nationals. Is there a worry, or how do you calm those fears? Do you calm those fears, navigating both sides of the people that want to return to normalcy and the people that are embracing the fact that it's never going to be the same way?
So, Mike, I think that's an excellent question. One of the things I love to watch what other nations have done, especially those that are coming down on the downturn and flattening the curve. There is a lot more screening. So you're going to see people walking around with masks after we've come out of this thing and flattening as a precaution. We're seeing that in other countries right now. They're mandating that people walk around with a mask so that I would not pass on anything to you. There are concerns if there are going to be secondary type infections and stuff coming back through. So it's going to be a process and a transition. So we're going to operate differently. As you go into buildings, everyone is there going to be there with one of those thermometers, at my head, beep, making sure I'm cool, to come in. We're going to watch things just like at 9/11, we started having people opening up their bags, to check and see what's going on. There's going to be a new normal. We have to go back to that P word. We're going to have to pivot and transition as we're building that trust. People are going to have to see us taking precautions, and build that trust, and they'll come back time. Now, it's funny when we go into a basketball game I know my wife, it's like you got the line I can walk through, and then she's in the one with checking the bag, and I'm just standing there patiently with all the other spouses, or guys waiting on the girlfriends that come through, and then we move on in. It's going to be a day-by-day process. The beautiful thing about it is there are vaccines that are being worked on that are going to tremendously help this. But we don't know if there's going to be another respiratory kind of illness in the future like this. So we're going to have precautions that are different. Collin asked earlier about what I did with the team. I said, one of the first things when we sat down, I said, the Japanese, I think, had this figured out centuries ago. They would all bow and look at it, and they kept these social distances. And one of the things that hit me when I went to Japan the first time was really seeing how clean everything was, even at the airport. As soon as our bags came off the terminal, a guy jumped on and he was polishing the whole thing down after each flight's bags came through, spraying down the wipe. And this is way pre-COVID, and I said, no wonder they didn't have this spike over there. As densely populated they are, they have practices that have been around for centuries, and maybe it's because of what's happened in the past, and they're very obedient people when it comes to government regulations and stuff, and everyone complied with their distancing and wearing their mask and, washing their hands, and you don't see it. And I think we have to imitate those best practices around the world, so that we can protect our community in the future.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge for me after this is all done, because I'm a hugger. Eric, are you not going to want to hug me anymore, man?
There's not going to be not wanting to, but I will respect you so much. I will give you a bow,
About it,
Well, think about it. Even, royals, historically, you didn't go and touch them and touch their hands. You would bow, or the women would curtsy, but you kept that distance. You didn't go past, And I wonder if this came from some of the past challenges historically with illness, where they see an audience where you weren't getting close to the marks, and you definitely weren't touching them.
I'm curious on your opinion on something, because, I've seen a lot of these articles kind of come up, talking about how this thing has probably been here since December, like November, December of last year, that there was a lot of respiratory illness, and doctors kept kind of saying, oh, you have a respiratory infection, and they kind of waved off. And I'll be honest, I've been what I would say super sick for me. And it was end of January, and the entire month of February, I had this respiratory infection, this thing, I was having, the symptoms that were described were the symptoms that I had. And I kept, I'm I'm healthy, I'm young, I'll fight it off. And eventually my parents were go to the doctor. I went to the doctor. They gave me some antibiotics. It didn't work. They gave me a steroid. It helped a little. Ended up sending me in to get a chest x-ray. I got a CT scan, a lot of stuff. And it came back as acute bronchitis, you're good, just, but man, there's been a lot of articles out there saying hey, the fact is we didn't have the testing in November, December, and January. People didn't know this thing, have you ever thought, has this thing been around since the end of 2019 and we just didn't know? And now we're creating this, there's a lot of people, I understand the seriousness of it, but I'm also in a weird place when they're if we treated this at a normal flu or respiratory infection, would we be in the state that we're in right now from an economic standpoint? And I'm not saying that that's right. Like, I think we're absolutely doing what we're supposed to be doing, knowing the impact of this thing and saying it. But I'm just kind of curious, like, have you read any of these articles? Have you seen any of this?
I have. And, it's one of the things that I think if it had been here longer, we would have much more cases and it would be much more positive. I think, one of the articles I read where there was a big conference in Wuhan is where everything kind of got out. But prior to that, it was kind of contained to that area. And I thought is if it had been around longer, we would have a lot more positive cases right now, only because it's so contagious. So I'll tell you, I was talking to, we're very fortunate in this community to have some incredible experts that have worked at the CDC and they lead, infectious disease for UF, the VA, North Florida and the folks. And I was talking to one of these guys and he was sharing with me on how infectious this is. And this is one of the things that we have to really be careful about because it's not like a regular flu or something else, because where we talk about droplets. When we're talking about this, and the reason for the mask and the face shields, more importantly, is because with Corona, it's like 60 times smaller than like a droplet kind of thing. So, when you wake up in the mornings, the way he described it to me, and you look at the window and you see this haze in your room, you think it's probably dust. So those are, the vapor, that's out there, and that's 60 times smaller, and it can float on the wind and go about for like 3 hours, and people don't even think about it. So we're talking about this 6 feet thing. If this thing's out there blowing or whatever, and then I breathe it in, it's a problem. That's why if we, protect ourselves. Shared an example of a couple south of us, well, actually north of this area, that had an anniversary party and invited a lot of their friends from New York and Miami. The wife was real cautious, didn't want to have anything. The husband kind of poo-pooed it kind of thing. Everyone that attended this event has been positive now. And this could have been prevented.
Yeah.
And this individual oversees infectious disease stuff from the VA, from Jacksonville, so the Georgia board, all the way down to Tampa, and they're dealing with these kind of cases. And those are the kind of examples that exist. That's how infectious it is. And I don't think we realize, and we've never had, even if you came to a party with bronchitis or flu, you're not going to infect all the people that are there at that event or wedding party. This is the difference. And I don't think we as a community have grasped that. And when I look at the communities that have really undergone the huge spike, you look at what they're doing today. I mean, they got like painter's overalls on. They got a mask, a face shield in front of the mask, and some goggles, and they're walking around with their thermometer and anyone they meet kind of deal. It's a different level. And I don't think we realize how contagious it really is because it's an aerosol. I'll give another example. A story I heard was Dr. Fauci, I think it is, from NIH, the guy who's been through this with like 6 different presidents. So a year ago, they had a recording of him. He was at a conference and, and he was just giving a speech and some keynote thing or whatever. And they asked him some questions afterwards. And they said, hey, what's the one thing that keeps you up at night? This is about a year ago. And he was like, nothing keeps me up at night. I go to bed exhausted. I sleep like a baby kind of thing. But I will tell you what I worry about every day when I go to work. And it's some new virus that'll be aerosolized because we're not ready to handle that in our nation yet. We're not prepared to handle any kind of virus that will attack, our bronchial or lung system that's aerosolized. That's my biggest concern. And here it is, a year later, we're living it.
Yeah. Have you guys had any, are you in the know in terms of what businesses have closed in Gainesville from this thing? What are you guys doing to keep tabs on it? What are, because I don't know, obviously it's one of the reasons why we're really focused on doing this podcast and kind of shifting to a daily format, is just trying to get as much information out there and help businesses navigate this thing in order to not close and in order to not lay off people. So what are, what's been the impact thus far? Any information you can give us there?
Yeah, so the impact has been huge. There are a lot of businesses that have slowed down dramatically. There are some that have closed completely, hoping that it'll just be a few weeks or a month at the most. Our concern is making sure that anyone that can do business viably, remotely, we want to encourage to do that. If you can stay in touch with your customers and do business remotely or whatever, we want to encourage that. Part of the reason for that is to make sure that the more people are still operating, even if it's not at the pace they were before, the more likely they would be better and easier to recover. Now, there are certain industries where, I'll give an example. My wife, the American Dental Association, came out a couple of weeks ago that said, look, hey, shut down. You shouldn't be operating unless you're seeing an emergency. If you're dealing with an emergency that can keep someone out of an ER, and then enter into that whole fray where they need to keep all those resources available for true emergencies tied around the COVID-19 case, fine. You can treat those patients, see those or whatever, or refer them to someone, if it's a specialist or whatever that's needed. But your general checkups, general dentistry, that kind of stuff, they wanted to close it. So there are certain groups that had no options. There are some that can operate partially in certain segments, like with the restaurants, they can do the takeout, but can't do the sit down and dine in. So we're working with everyone. And our biggest thing, especially those that we knew were shut down and couldn't do anything, to get access to funds right away. That's been our focus up to this week, has really been making sure we're given all the guidance to get access to funds. We're also working with the state and national chamber, because there's certain groups that weren't included, to make sure they can have access to funds. So we had all of our 501c3s, 4s, 5s, we had all of the charitable organizations on that list to be qualifiers for funds with the PPP, and all got excluded except two, the 501c3s and the 501c19s. C3s, the charitable organizations, 19 are veterans. So you take your C4s, C5s, those that deal with farmers, farm bureaus, that kind of stuff. Some of those things I consider essential, eating and food and farmers, but those were eliminated. C6s, and so we're working to try to get those in the next phase. So we have a policy hat that we're working with based on information we're hearing from our members, and we're reaching out. We're reaching out to all of our members, and you'll be getting a call, Collin, and really finding out, making sure you understand the resources that are there for you and what can we do to help you and find out, so those calls are going to every business. And we're looking at not only chamber members, we're looking at past chamber members, those who've never been chamber members. We're reaching out to our community to help everyone that we can, because we understand that when it's time to shift to, our redeployment of really building our infrastructure, that communication is key. That's why we wanted to make sure we were out there with pertinent information for our businesses and being a resource for them to call and reach out at any time. And we're talking all businesses within our county. We want to make sure that they know we're here to help them.
Yeah, I know we're getting towards the end of our time, but Mike had one more question. So are you good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, hey, so, we talked about some behavioral changes, some pivots to go cocktails, I'm an optimist. So what's one thing that maybe you're hoping stays at, when we get to the other side of this, that you kind of hope has a lasting impact?
Well, one of the things that we knew coming into this, we were known as the most charitable community in the state of Florida. So our city was known as that. We got that recognition, got that award going into this. And this has only proven that to me. But one of the things I've told people about our community and our businesses is that we're very resilient. And we are resilient because we have the ability to adapt. And one of the things I want us to continue to run with as we leave and transition out of this whole COVID-19 episode is really that we keep that at the forefront of who we are, being an adaptable, resilient community that supports and cares about everyone in it, and that we're not leaving anyone behind. When we rolled out our Collaborate 2025, our whole tagline was creating a stronger region and a better life together. And that's for everyone, all of our residents. And I believe that through our creativity, we can continue to adapt and continue to be resilient and just continue to keep this collaborative spirit that we're seeing operating in our community. We're seeing it with our county leaders. We're seeing it with our city leaders. We're seeing it with our businesses, our community as a whole, our nonprofits, our for-profits. We're watching everyone reach out and be creative in ways to help one another and come up with solutions to the challenges out there. So Mike, that would be my biggest takeaway, is that we continue to push this, that we would embrace our economic engines in this community in a way we never have before, and be there for one another as we come and we reach this recovery period.
Okay, and final question, Eric. If what can Mike and I do to help?
Well, this is the great thing. You guys are living this challenge right now, and you're being very vocal. And by having this podcast is incredible. You're reaching so many of our community members. You're reaching so many businesses right now. Continue to spread the word. Continue to bring these vehicles, because people are looking for access. They're looking for knowledge. They're looking for information that can help them and impact them. One of the things, we were talking about before all this happened was really our action teams, that we can focus on areas to strengthen our community. This is going to take an even greater priority than we even imagine, as we focus on rebuilding our community. And so I just want to make sure they continue to share the message, let people know they can reach out to us. We're here to help our community in any way possible. We only can do this through our members and them sharing their concerns, issues, or challenges. Please continue to advise all of your listeners, if they have issues or concerns, come to our website, call our telephone numbers. They go directly to our cell phones. Let us know how we can help.
Okay, let's wrap up with that information then. How can they contact you? Give us the phone number, give us the website, all that good stuff.
Okay, so right now you're looking at the Greater Gainesville Chamber. And if you just put that in, you'll pull up. We have several components and ways that you can reach us right now. So you can just go to the Greater Gainesville website, greatergainesvillechamber.com, and pull it up, and you will have access to all of our numbers, all of our information. You'll see the current Gainesville Together webpage. It's showing what's happening during this period. You'll also see the Gainesville COVID-19 page. These are all individual pages on the Gainesville Chamber. But if you just go to the GainesvilleChamber.com, you will be able to see all these pages, all these access you can pull up. All of our team members, all of our contact information, and please, that's why we're here. We want to keep it same, GainesvilleChamber.com.
Eric, man, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on. Thank you to the Chamber, to you and the team for everything that you're doing for the community right now. Absolutely love you guys. Honored to know all of you. And if you're, again, if you're listening and you're not a member of the Chamber of Commerce, you need to be a member of the Chamber of Commerce. This is an organization that's doing incredible work for our community, and I'm proud to know all of you guys. So keep it up, man. Thank you so much. It looks like you might have froze again. Did you freeze? No, I ain't doing the fake. I was like, are you doing the fake? The Zoom freeze fake, where you're like,
the Zoom freeze face.
You just freeze and you fake it. Hey, man. Thanks again for your time, Eric. And everybody, this is the WHOA GNV podcast, the podcast bringing you businesses and individuals that make you go, whoa. Eric, give us your best whoa.
Whoa!
I like that. I like that one. Gainesville, we'll see you later.